Hello, I'm Ajahn Sona. We're back for our Q&A live. And let us proceed, Pia, with our first question.
Ajahn, our first question is from the live chat from Echnoderm. Dear Venerable, I now have comparatively less time to meditate and practice the Dhamma due to different circumstances. What advice would you give in most effectively using my time for practice?
Well, there are two ways of looking at it. One is, do you really have less time? Or do you mean that you are busier? There is a saying by Gandhi. He said, every day I meditate for an hour, but on days when I'm really busy, I meditate 2 hours. So maybe your meditation time should go up. The more demand on your time and the busyness in your life might be an indication to do the opposite of what you think. That is, rather than skip meditation, to make time for more meditation. That to prepare yourself for the flurry and sometimes worry of excessive demands, you need more in the opposite direction. You need more quiet time. So this is how to think about it. Quite often people get going and busyness leads to more busyness. But sometimes this is a function of the mind. You know, the mind is simply in a state of flurry and invents all kinds of activities for itself that turn out later on reflection in serenity to be unnecessary, to have been unnecessary. So looking back on your life at busy times and asking yourself, was that really necessary? Was that really necessary? So you know how you live your life depends on the quality of your thought processes and your emotional process. So quite often, instead of spending a lot of time frantically attempting to solve problems, it's profitable to dissolve the problems rather than solve them, because many of them are artificial and they are based simply on overactivity of the mind. The kind of worries and anxieties that you get late at night that disturb your sleep and 2 a.m. and your mind is in a weakened condition, and the next day when you're wide awake and fully functioning, those problems, worries, the ghostly threats in the night are gone. They're dissolved because your mind is in a different state. So think about it. And that's why we go to a wise person as well. We can't trust our own mind sometimes. And if our problems are looked at from outside, that person has more perspective and they can give you advice which you would not have come up with. So there's two solutions to your situation. One is, are you really busy? Is it really taking up your time? Or is it because you're in a certain state of mind that has increased unnecessary activities and increased complications and fretting over details which don't need to be fretted over? In that case, you need to meditate more. And if you genuinely are strapped for time, you have to have 3 jobs in order to put bread on the table or something like this, then you should ask somebody who is in a state of ease and clarity. Tell them about your life, your situation, and see if they can come up with better strategies for being less busy. You know, there's a lot of positive praise for people who are busy in this society. And this starts quite early in life. We say, you know, how you doing? Keeping busy. Good, you know, me too. You know, instead of it being slightly something of a problem to be busy, it's praised. So busyness for the sake of busyness is not praiseworthy. It just might mean that you're a bad use of your time. Maybe the right answer is, how you doing? Oh, keeping serene, you know. Me too, I'm keeping serene. So that's the most important part, the quality of your time, not the quantity of your activity, but the quality of your inner states. So that's an answer in brief. Let's go on.
Our next question is from Erland in Nordland, Norway. Dear Ajahn, I am from northern Norway with a climate similar to Canada. I enjoy hiking and meditating in nature. Do you have any tips on outdoor Dhamma practice?
Well, I spent a lot of years doing that myself, and that's a great way to bring you towards total spiritual practice. I spent many years in extended camping trips, all seasons, including winter, in Canada. And I give credit to nature and the bareness of the experience to focusing me on the deeper questions of life. And so the Buddha advises monks, go to the forest, stay in the forest, live in the forest, practice in the forest. Now, in this particular tradition, we're forest monks, and I would say the most monks in the world are not forest monks anymore. They're city monks. They're living in big urban areas, Bangkok and Colombo and the big cities and towns. And so what happened to that advice? There's a kind of a gradual absorption of monks, the demands for monks in cities, etc. So the reforest movement is a kind of reform movement back to the forest and the benefits of practicing in the forest. And so if it's good for the monks, it's good for you as well. Nature, hopefully on your camping trips that you don't bring entertainment with you. Don't bring cameras even. Don't try to capture the experience. This is something I learned, is like no amount of taking pictures of it meant anything like the experience itself. It's always, if you take a picture of yourself out at 40 below zero and you look at it in a living room later on, it's just somebody standing in a nice white setting. You don't experience the cold. You don't experience the sensation. So leave your camera behind. Leave books behind. Don't read. Don't take a book. Don't take any media. Don't take anything to amuse yourself or entertain yourself. Go just in the nature. And it doesn't have to be a lot of artificial type of formal meditation, but just leave yourself bereft of distraction. And you'll have to deal with nature. If you go with friends, make sure they're not the chatty type. Some people go camping as a kind of a recreation, it's an entertainment really, but this type of camping is spiritual camping. And it is the appreciation of silence and removing yourself from society. Now, if you have one friend or two friends, I hope the conversation is more or less appreciating the experience of simplicity, perhaps the experience of nature itself, the reduction of social impingement, and maybe the conversations around the campfire at night is deep questions, philosophical questions, or questions on how to make the best of existence. And not that many comrades you may find are interested in that. Most people would avoid that kind of thing. They want to bring spend a lot of time cooking and eating food and drinking booze and amusing themselves. So, or doing sports, canoeing through whitewater and so forth, for kind of like exhilarating adventures. This is not spiritual camping. It's not an exhilarating adventure. It's The exhilarating adventure is the deprivation of human society is what it is. And you're left face to face with yourself in nature. And this is the way, this is practically the monk's life. So when you do it, be moderate with your food as well. Don't overindulge with the food. And learn how to, the skill of proper camping and not to be burdened like a mule when you go into the forest. Go lightly and with skills, and develop the skills of mind which make you comfortable in low sensory nature experiences. So I have a tremendous amount to say about this because I did this for years and years, and I never left the forest. I've moved in. My little cottage is in the middle of the forest. I look out on a marsh. Moose peer into my window. Squirrels run around. Wildlife is everywhere. Snow is everywhere. The stars are sparkling in the skies and so forth. And this is where I live, in my little cottage by myself. And that's a very supportive environment. But you need to know the skills of mind. Most people are afraid to be alone in nature. They can't wait to get out of there. So learn to be comfortable with it. I probably should write a whole book on this or do a whole long extended talk on this. Anyway, that's all for now. Let's go on to the next question.
Our next question's from the live chat from Deborah in Virginia, United States. When a person disrobes after having gone forth and given away all of their possessions, is there any type of financial assistance to help with transitioning?
There are no formal indications of that in the monastic, the rules for monastics. There's no commitment to support somebody if they disrobe. Various communities do things in different ways. Sometimes they will try to offer a stipend or some little help to somebody who disrobes, but not always. Especially in a big Buddhist country like Thailand, where you have hundreds of thousands of monastics, and the turnover there is fantastic as well. It can be 100,000 people a year disrobe, because they're only in for temporary purposes, and usually there's no support structure at all. Maybe if you were in the West and you'd been in the robes for 5 years or something, and you decided that it wasn't for you and you left. I mean, the community, it's not a disgrace to disrobe, but it's not encouraged by the Buddha. The Buddha very clearly encourages one who enters the robes to stay in the robes, even with tear-stained face. So even when times get tough, you're to endure it. However, in certain countries at this time, the idea of temporary ordination is quite popular, which didn't seem to be the original vision. And so there's no preparation for supporting a person who leaves the robes. But certainly, I know many ex-monks, and we have nothing but goodwill for them. They're friends. They made their efforts. They chose a different way. There's no problem. They're usually, this is what the Buddha said, is one of the characteristics of the Sangha is that monks don't usually disrobe because they are alienated from the Dhamma or Buddhism. They just have other wants at the time, and they usually remain in great friendship with those in the Sangha, in the robes. And they usually remain highly respectful of the Buddha and the Dhamma and the Sangha, and quite frequently visit monasteries, offer support, etc. But yeah, so there's no formal support structure, but some communities help with the transition if they can. Yes.
Next question is from the live chat from AS in Florida. When I read about arahants like Venerable Sariputta and Venerable Moggallana, it is difficult to make sense of some Mahayana practitioners' claims that Theravada practitioners are selfish. There are Mahayana practitioners in my life, and I would like to better understand this friction.
Well, yes, the Mahayana, so Mahayana means the great vehicle. Maha means great or grand. Yana means vehicle. And Theravada, so in the Mahayana, some of the rather pejorative names for what is we call the Theravada, the way of the elders, is the Hinayana, the lesser vehicle. So, but who came up with these names? I mean, the Mahayana, the great vehicle, is self-named. That's a little bit egotistic, isn't it? I think I'll call myself the great vehicle. And you are the lesser vehicle, the inferior vehicle. Now, of course, you won't find this in the original suttas at all. You will find no mention of the Mahayana. There wasn't such a school. So there's no recorded discourses or competitive schools or competition between the schools because those schools hadn't appeared at the time of the Buddha. What the Buddha taught is primarily this arahant path, something like what the Theravada follows to this day, and didn't seem to encourage, there's no suttas encouraging somebody to take up the vow to become a Sama Sambuddha. First of all, the early suttas seem to indicate that the rarity of a fully enlightened Buddha who has remained voluntarily in samsara on the process of becoming a fully enlightened Buddha is extraordinarily rare. So 1 out of trillions. Usually in the Mahayana schools, everybody walks through the door and say, okay, now let's take a vow, everybody. I vow to stay in samsara, to have endless beings. I vow to liberate, etc. Where did this come from? You don't see that vow anywhere. In the early suttas, you never see the Buddha talking about universal liberation. He says the Buddha comes for the benefit of many. He doesn't say the benefit of all. He comes for the benefit of many. He knows perfectly well that most of the population of the earth is not going to become enlightened or even hear of the Buddha, let alone be influenced by the Buddha. In fact, of course, many people will be quite opposed to the teachings of the Buddha. So it's not a universal salvation doctrine. It simply states in a very bold way that each individual is responsible for their own development, and ultimate salvation is up to you. And it's an arduous task which goes against the stream of the world. The other aspect is that Buddhism has no origination of the universe, so that there's no idea that God created the universe, or that there is an eternal God and then the universe comes into existence, or anything like this. This whole question of the origins of the universe is completely set aside. But we must say, though, the Buddha also says there are incalculable beings in the universe. So Buddhism doesn't have the idea that there's one planet in the universe that's inhabited, as sort of the Christian idea, at least the early Christian idea, some religious ideas that this is the only planet and God had a special plan for it, and so forth. Buddhism proposes there are incalculable numbers of world systems in the universe, and the universe's size is unknown, and it doesn't decide whether it's infinite or not. So in this world, this universe or universes of incalculable world systems and incalculable numbers of beings, if they've been around for an incalculable number of years and they're still mostly unenlightened, When is this final condition where all beings get enlightened coming? That vow, I vow to save all beings, or I vow to remain in samsara until all beings are enlightened, etc. If an infinity of time has gone by and there's still incalculable or possibly infinite numbers of beings, it mathematically ain't going to happen. So we get back to the more realism of the early school. And I would say that if you propose an unattainable altruism, that it's a cruelty. So I would say that the bodhisattva vow, in asking somebody to take a bodhisattva vow to save all beings or remain in samsara, etc., is cruel. It is not compassionate. It is not compassionate to the individual. It is not compassionate to everybody, because it's literally unattainable. It is not realistic. It's not anything like that, and it is in extreme discord with the teachings of the known discourses of the historical Buddha. The Mahayana school goes to great lengths to spin somehow how this happened, what the Buddha said, and how it changed later, and so forth. So you have a lot of suttas that are obviously 500 years after the Buddha died, using the voice of the Buddha, claiming it's a talk by the Buddha, a sutra right from the Buddha's mouth, in quite opposition to the teachings of the historical Buddha. Now, you got a choice here, and the choice isn't, are you going to take this on authority? You just believe this sutra, you believe that it's authentic, you believe that the Buddha is a special teaching from a later time for higher development. Do you believe it or not? Or do you think that it's a group of people, monks, that had a spin, had a view of things, and that they were in a political competition with another school of monks? And they came up and just fabricated, or let's say had, piously fabricated some scriptures. This is what I take it to be. If you allow yourself to not accept these things as delivered from on high, and you question human motivations and so forth, I take it from a historical point of view that these are pious fabrications done by rival schools of Buddhist monks much later after the time of the Buddha. So on closer examination of these points, I conclude that these are exaggerated claims. They do not accord with the historical teachings of the Buddha, and therefore I set them aside, as the historical Buddha indicated that a monk should. So when things are in conflict with the suttas, set them aside, go back to learning the suttas and so forth. So actually I started in these schools. I started in the Mahayana school. I started with a Tibetan teacher, and I went to a Zen teacher, etc. And once I started reading and appreciating the Theravada scriptures, I changed my mind. And I did not find any of those Mahayana arguments convincing whatsoever. In fact, I found them rather problematic and basically unwise to follow. So that's my take on it. And of course, I am a Theravada monk, have been for 34 years now. And I have, the longer I'm in the robes and in the school, the more comfortable I am with that particular attitude. So you should question people who say that people who have attained selflessness are selfish. Okay, let's go on to the next question.
Next question is from the live chat from Lake in Portland, Oregon, United States. Dear Ajahn, what does it mean to be, quote, unburdened with duties, unquote, from the Metta Sutta? And how does this apply to a householder?
Well, I think you should listen to my 10 talks on loving kindness. So that particular phrase comes from the Metta Sutta, the discourse on loving kindness, unburdened by duties, frugal in their ways. So unburdened by duties, not unburdened with duties. It's that you have duties, but you are not taking them as a burden. Now, you don't distract yourself from facing reality. So some people are workaholics. Why are they workaholics? Why are they exercise holics? Why are they distraction holics? Because they got a problem. They're uncomfortable with being, and they need to avoid the experience of being with themselves because they've had maybe trauma or something in their lives. So you'll see people exercising 8 hours a day or working 18 hours a day all the time. There's the roots of that is a problem. They are distracted with duties. So that's one thing that should not be, is just duties for duty's sake, work for work's sake, exercise for exercise sake, endlessly distracting yourself. The other thing is, though, that you can't function without duties. So the monks have prescribed duties, and these are right in the rules for monks, that you must when you're ordination, you're expected to take on these duties for community living and even your own. You must tidy up your cabin or your cave. If you're living in a cave, you must sweep and carefully take care of the spider webs and this and that. You must go on your alms round every day to get your food. You must wash your robes from time to time, etc. You must do all these things. These are duties to be done. And this is what it's called, duties to be done. So it's obvious that the Buddha isn't advocating that you could find some lifestyle where there are no duties. So let's set aside the possible interpretation of that you can live duty-free. I think that's only in international airports where duty-free. So you have duties, but do they weigh on you? Do they crush you, or do you just do them with mindfulness, with presence, and you execute them appropriately and properly? And that is the only possible way we can understand these things. Avoid mere busyness, but do not believe in a life where there are no duties, but make the duties light in your mind, etc. You know, there's a saying, I slept and dreamt that life was beauty. I woke and found that life was duty. I don't like that. I would like to turn it around and say, I slept and dreamt that life was duty. I woke and found that life was beauty. But that's not quite good enough either. I want duty to be beauty. When I woke, I found that life was beautiful duties. So that's the way to approach this phrase. Yeah.
Next question from the live chat is from Pamela. Is not self the same as no soul?
Right. I think the monk Ajahn Sona has gone to quite a bit of trouble to distinguish between the term not self and no self. And this is an interesting distinction which he makes. And he makes that distinction because there are two schools of ways of looking at this idea of the self, or the absence of self. And it has a lot of implications for what happens when a fully enlightened person dies. So there's a school of Buddhism which does not want to give the idea that when one finally attains nibbana, ultimate nibbana, one merely lives it. Of course, it happens within the present life, the human life, It can happen in other realms as well, but it happens to humans. So there's many people in history who have attained the full enlightenment and then died. And the famous question is, what happens to that person when they die? Now, if you're raised in a kind of Christian idea, then you think maybe they go off to an eternal heaven, but that does not seem to be the Buddhist idea. The kind of language the Buddha uses is that they are not reborn. Period. They're not reborn. Well, what are they extinguished? And that seems to be not that would be easy to say, and it doesn't seem to be the case either. So we're left with this puzzled look on our face. And so two types of explanation rise. One is that the idea that there is no self is not the right way to understand what the Buddha said. He says, first of all, that the complete description of a human is called the 5 khandhas. That is the body, feelings, perception, consciousness, and volition. And these 5 khandhas are the entirety of a human. There is nothing else than that. There is no separate soul, either outside the khandhas or within the khandhas. Now that seems quite complete. That statement sounds like there's no self. So some would argue that it just means that the body is not self, feelings are not self, perception is not self, consciousness is not self, volitions are not self, but there's whatever's left is sort of the self. So that's some form of consciousness, because it can't simply be material, because material is not conscious. So some sort of consciousness which is not included in the 5 khandhas, which is supposed to be all-inclusive, is somehow thought to be the explanation for this. Now, it seems that a significant portion of the Theravada world, and even the Buddhist world, disagrees with this. It seems the language is plain. There is no indescribable consciousness, nibbanic consciousness, without any of the 5 khandhas that somehow persists. So this is the no self school. There is no self, including some alternative form of consciousness which persists. And then the not self school says, well, yeah, he meant that the 5 khandhas are not self, but doesn't say there is no self. He just said not self. Now, I'm going to make my explanation a little bit. The Buddha is an extremely good logician. And here's the nature of logic. And this persists in the West, the arguments for and against the existence of God. Why are there no absolutely compelling arguments for the existence of God or against the existence of God? I mean, this has been argued for many centuries by the best minds on the planet. And still, you cannot find a single compelling, like absolutely compelling argument. You find persuasive arguments both ways. There is no God, there is a God. Oh, clever ideas, persuasive ideas, but you do not find an argument which absolutely compels you to believe there is no God or that there is. Now, why is this? Because it's typically you can't prove a negative. So this is one of the great logicians, Bertrand Russell, was agnostic on the issue because he said, well, for instance, there may be a teapot floating in space on the other side of the moon, and we simply can't discount that idea because we can't see the other side of the moon. We don't know about the other side of the moon, and indeed there may be a teapot on the other side of the moon. So it is impossible to know there is no compelling argument to eliminate that, to say this can't exist. So in order to disprove the existence of God, you have to search every corner of the universe, say, look, we looked everywhere, there is no God. You can't do that. So this is the problem with the what the Buddha goes out on. He says, let's look at all the possible likely suspects in terms of where the self is. Let's look at the 5 khandhas, and when we look at them and examine them, we find there is not a self in the body, there's not a self in feelings, there's not a self in perception, there's not a self in consciousness, there's not a self in volitions. And therefore, I conclude there is no self. The conclusion is left. The Buddha leaves it that no one has found the self. So no one has found God. No one has found the self. Does that mean there is no self? Well, we haven't found one. And so those who argue that the fact that there is no self found in the 5 khandhas means there's no self have a pretty good argument, but again, you can't prove a negative. There is no self in the universe, can't prove that, but to insist that, well, there must be, is very hard to conclude, because we can't conceive of this self which is other than the 5 khandhas. The problem is descriptions of a self, a meaningful self that is without consciousness, without feelings, without perceptions, without body, without any of these things, without feelings, we come up blank. I think my mind blanks out when we describe that I somehow exist, but I exist without a body, without feelings, without perceptions, without consciousness, without volitions. What kind of existence is that? Something quite beyond my capacity to formulate, quite beyond the capacity of language to describe. So this is this question, and I'm glad you brought it up, and I've probably gone on at fair length with this, but it is one of the critical and debatable questions in Buddhist history, in Theravada history as well. And it has different answers as well in different schools of Buddhism. So there you have it.
Our next question is from Eva in British Columbia, Canada. Dear Venerable, how can faith help to mitigate self-doubt and self-hatred?
Well, faith can help, but really it's a matter of wisdom that really does this. And it's simply that one is unwisely attending to the faults. Self-hate is unwise attention to the fault. And it is always accompanied by negative emotions. And the Buddha says, don't do that, dear. Stop that. You are inflicting pain unnecessarily, and this is the nature of ill will. It unwisely attends to the fault. Now, so does it mean that you have no faults? No, you have faults. Attend to them wisely, and it will not be accompanied by negative feelings. It will not become accompanied by loathing, self-hatred, or any of these things. Faults are something to be improved and repaired. But as a mother taking care of a baby, the baby has all kinds of faults. Or the young child puts his finger up its nose and so forth. The mother doesn't just let it do that because she loves it, but because she loves it, she says, now, dear, don't do that. People don't like that. That's not good. And then, if you throw things on the floor, no, that's not good for you. It's not, others don't like that. And because I love you, you're going to learn not to do that. It's not because I hate you that we're going to stop you throwing things on the floor. It's because I love you that we're going to stop throwing things on the floor. So this is the Buddha's approach to this, is that because of self-love, that you're you are your own mother. You're taking care of yourself as a good mother should take care of one. And you do it with love, and you repair and correct any faults. But that's accompanied by a feeling of goodwill, because love always feels good. It never feels bad. It's a positive emotion. It never feels bad. It feels good. But it is highly creative. It is playful. It improves the quality of one's life because you care about yourself, because you love yourself. So these corrections and so forth are not to be accompanied by pain and self-hatred. And those are identical, by the way. Hatred is always painful. Ill will towards oneself or another always is experienced as an unpleasant emotional feeling. And we want to not have those. And we can progress, improve ourselves, improve the world in many ways through loving kindness. It's the best. It's playful, it's creative, it's intelligent, and it feels good. So that's the one you should choose. And it's nothing to do with faith. It's to do with some brains. Yeah.
Next question is from Susan in San Diego, California, United States. Dear Ajahn Sona, I hear practice non-attachment, and I aspire to it. Please guide in ways to cultivate. I think I understand yet still struggle. Maybe it's the carnival talk. I don't have time to indulge in worldly path to darkness.
Well, congratulations. Who wants to go on a path to darkness? Carnival or not. And if you listen to the media and all of those people out there who spend too much time on the media, listening to voices of doom and gloom and darkness and horror, etc., stop that. So that's the carnival. That's the welcome to the fun house, the distorting mirrors and so forth. And it's just super abundant now because of the exposure to media. So be very careful about what you eat. Like, don't spend the day chomping on junk food, and don't spend the day chomping on junk media, junk ideas, everybody's opinion stuff. It's just not good for you. Be very selective. Be very careful with your intake of ideas. Look for those which encourage generosity, kindness, and clarity. Avoid those which encourage miserliness, ill will, and confusion. So about non-attachment, the practice of non-attachment, detachment is the great virtue of the philosopher, both in the West and in the East. All of the great wise voices of the past have said, look, what attachment is that you are chained to the worldly experiences. You got a rope that's around your waist, and it's tied to little rewards like money and fame and success and good fortune and little treats of food and all of this kind of stuff, sensory experience. You're attached by a rope to the world, and boy, if that rope pulls you one way, it's going to hurt. So what if you cut the rope and then you had your happiness independent of the situations of the world? So that's what a detachment is. You untie the rope which connects you to the world of sensory experience and the social world. And you maintain your well-being and happiness independent of the circumstances and situations of the world. So the world will continue to have terrible events, tragedies, and so forth, but you are no longer in the play. You've decided that it's useless to go up and down with the world because the world never stops going up and down. You're stepping off the ride at the carnival. You're stepping off the Ferris wheel, going up and down. And you're now stabilizing your emotions, and whatever happens in the world is not going to affect your well-being and happiness, because it would be unwise of you to be let the world push your buttons. Now, does that mean that you're stone cold and that you have no, starving children and so forth mean nothing to you? No, that's an unwise option. It's called callousness, indifference. Now, you can be useful, charitable, whatever it is, intelligently, but do you need to descend into sorrow and grief over this? Does that help anybody? When other people are in grief, do you sympathetically go into grief or not? I think you shouldn't. I think that a doctor, if he walks into a ward of sick people, shouldn't he get sick too? Wouldn't that be the thing to do? If he's sympathetic, he should get sick. No, that's stupid, isn't it? The doctor needs to remain well amongst the sick. Otherwise, nobody gets better. So we want the doctor to remain well, and we want you to remain emotionally well amongst those who are grieving and sorrowing. And perhaps others can take up the example that it's possible to be in this world of death and disease and loss, all of these things, and still be well amongst the sorrowing crowd. So that's what detachment is that you insist on being emotionally well, happy, peaceful in the midst of this universe, which runs by itself, which you did not make, which you do not approve of, and you've stopped disapproving of because that's a waste of time. The universe doesn't care at all about your opinion of it. It produces tragedy and comedy, and you have decided not to be pulled up and down by those tragic and comic events. You are now independent. You are a wise person, aloof from this, basking in well-being until your last breath and beyond.
Next question is from the live chat from Abhinav in Toronto, Canada. Sometimes I find my chronic pain unbearable. In those times, I am only left with anxiety and unable to think. What is your advice for such situations?
Well, the Buddha gives many examples of this because, of course, many, many, many humans will experience in their lives great pain. Now, is it bodily pain or is it mental pain? Let's just say that it's bodily pain. And one should take whatever medicines can help to reduce the pain. And one should use emotions and ideas that also make pain tolerable. And one of them is just sheer loving kindness helps making pain bearable. But there's only one way to make pain worse. Bodily pain is made worse by adding mental pain to it. So when your anxiety and your despair about your physical pain is the one sure way to make it worse. So you got to decide that I can make it better or I can make it worse. I may not be able to get rid of this bodily pain, but I can get rid of this terrible emotional pain that I keep jabbing into myself, because that's something I do to myself. So I've got to change my attitude towards this pain. I have to acknowledge that the physical pain is very present and real, and I need to get medicine that can reduce that. But at the same time, I cannot make it worse. It would be foolish of me. I have to make this bearable. And it means that I have to seek out positive emotions. I need to listen to the voice of another talk me into non-anxiety, non-fear, non-despair. I listen to this, and that person helps me out of it. So you listen to my talks on this again and again, or anybody else who can talk you out of it, talk you into a positive state of mind. And in the meantime, treat yourself well with the right medicines as a kindness to your body. But the pain is in your body, and don't add to it by emotional pain as well.
Next question is from the live chat from Sun Tzu in Florida, United States. Dear Venerable Ajahn, how do the laws of karma work? Is there a universal consciousness that acts and determines when and how karma will occur?
Well, you should ask yourself, is is it necessary to have a universal consciousness that keeps track of the laws of physics? So even at the atomic level, if one atom bumps into another, there's an equal and opposite reaction, etc. Is it necessary to have a consciousness keeping track of all these little events in the physical world? If it's not necessary to have a consciousness keeping track of that, then it's not necessary to have a consciousness keeping track of the moral cause and effect. We would say, so in Christian ideas, they posit that a God sort of keeps track of all these things. In Buddhist ideas, that we have all of these laws. We have the laws of physics, we have the laws of biology, we have the laws of psychology, and we have the laws of karma, which is the laws of moral cause and effect. And we don't feel the need for any entity to be keeping track of this. This is just the way it works. It's just the way the universe works. There are moral laws. So this is one of the great questions of modern times, is like, are there moral laws? This is in the West, right, because of the dominance of Christianity, God is the explanation that why there is morality, and God expresses these commandments and so forth in the Bible, and you don't know why you should be this way or that way. You just know that you've been ordered by God to behave this way. This has never been the explanation in Buddhism. And now, sometime in the 19th century, when God died, or as Nietzsche said, God is dead, and we killed him. Killed him with killed the idea of God. Now you're left with, yeah, but so then what's right and wrong? What's the moral problem? What's the moral situation? Where if there's no commandments, anything is permissible. This is one of the famous statements. Without God, all is permissible. Well, that's the danger of explaining what is good and bad by needing a deity to explain this. Buddhism has never needed a deity to explain this. They just say they're intrinsic laws, and you can feel them. So you can feel the moral laws, and you can have a direct experience of whether generosity, the generous heart, the kindly heart, and the lucid mind is a preferable experience to the greedy, the angry, and the confused. You don't have to have commandments from God. You don't have to ask anybody else, how am I having fun yet? It is a direct experience. And they say that, so that's your indicator of positive, that that your circuits are lighting up because you're on the way. They say this in Taoist language, the way. They talk about the way, the Tao, and this is an intuitive experience, and it is the intuitive experience of the positive emotional nature of generosity, kindness, and clarity, and the negative nature of greed, hatred, and delusion. And you don't need a entity to keep track of any of this stuff. But of course, so does a bad action, an intentional bad action, if nobody else catches you at it and you don't remember it, then does it have any consequences at all? Well, Buddhists say, yes, it will have fruition at some point, and it may not be in this life. So if you have a theory that there is only this life, and morality is only apparent, the cause and effect in the moral dimension is only apparent if something negative happens in this life to somebody who has done negative things, then there is apparently no moral law. Mass murderers sometimes get away with it. They live to be 90. They seem to be not too unhappy and too distressed about it, and then they die. And so it seems a great injustice. Now, from a Christian point of view, well, they get judged and go to hell afterwards. And so there is justice if you include the next life. So from a Buddhist point of view, it also, there are resultants which occur after this life. There are resultants which occur in this life. And some of the things that happen in this life actually have causes from previous lives. So this is what Christianity doesn't have, is a previous life. Apparently you pop into this existence out of nothing, but then afterwards you persist for eternity. Whereas Buddhism says, well, no, you pre-existed, and this is one of the lives, and then you continue to exist in different forms in different ways. And it's in the long view of things that there are the laws of cause and effect work out. So that's the explanation of moral cause and effect without God. Okay, well, we have come to the end of our hour of Q&A. And we are hopefully going to be back next week. So tune in for that.